There has been a political coup in Haiti. The Presidential Transitional Council, led by the new president of the Presidential Transitional Council, Leslie Voltaire, has signed a decree to fire Prime Minister Garry Conille from office. Now, this video will delve into the reasons as to why the Presidential Transitional Council has decided to fire the Prime Minister Garry Conille. We'll also look into the repercussions of firing the Haitian Prime Minister who oversaw the introduction of the MSS mission in Haiti, and what will this mean for the future of Haiti. Thank you for being here. If you're new to the channel, kindly subscribe and leave a comment on this discussion. Now, Prime Minister Garry Conille is not new to Haitian politics. The Prime Minister was in office in 2012, where there was some disagreement between him and the then president, and he decided to resign. He then went to serve the international community and was recently the head of UNICEF in Latin America. The international community loved Garry Conille because he was detached from the divisive Haitian politics. Politics in Haiti is very divisive because a lot of people have strong leanings to political parties and spearhead the sentiments of those political parties to move the country. Now, Garry Conille was a perfect pick because he was not so much into the traditional political parties in Haiti. He had stayed 10 years out of the country, and that meant that this was a fresh person, a new person that would lead Haiti from the divisive political parties that have destroyed the country. We know that Haiti is in this crisis because of the hard stances of the politicians in that country. Before the assassination of Jovenel Moïse in July 2021, there had been a lot of political discussions whether Jovenel Moïse should still be in office or Jovenel Moïse's term had ended. And that is part of the reason why there was a divided country that in one way or another led to the assassination of Jovenel Moïse. Now, before Jovenel Moïse was assassinated, he had appointed Ariel Henry as the Prime Minister of Haiti. Ariel Henry went over to take as the Prime Minister of Haiti after the death of Jovenel Moïse and was the Prime Minister for quite some time until the gangs in Haiti said that they don't want Ariel Henry to continue serving as the Prime Minister of Haiti just earlier this year. And that led Ariel Henry to step down after he came to Kenya to sign bilateral documents between Kenya and Haiti with President Ruto. Haiti lost a prime minister and another was appointed by the new installed Presidential Transitional Council. This 9-member council appointed Garry Conille in May to become the new Prime Minister of Haiti. Now, as we understand this system, this is a parliamentary system. The Prime Minister is elected by the Parliament, who is now the head of government. This is the similar kind of a system that you can find in the UK. It's a similar system that you can find even in Ethiopia, where the Prime Minister is the head of government and then the President is the head of state. Now, in this situation, the Prime Minister should be the head of government, and then the Presidential Transitional Council should be the head of state, with one member of the council acting as the president, which is a rotational basis. That means that different members will become president at a particular point from the 9-member Presidential Transitional Council. Now, the problem came in when the Presidential Transitional Council had to choose another person to lead the PTC as the president. The previous leader of the Presidential Transitional Council was Edgar Leblanc. Edgar Leblanc is the one who was the president of the PTC as Garry Conille took over the reins of power as the prime minister who would head the government. Now, the prime minister is supposed to form his own government. He's supposed to oversee the daily runnings of the government. That means even the cabinet secretary or the permanent secretary should be under the prime minister. But a problem came in after there was a change from Edgar Leblanc as the head of PTC to Leslie Voltaire, who is now the head of PTC. He took over just last month. Now, there has been a lot of disagreements between the Prime Minister, Garry Conille, and the new head of the Presidential Transitional Council, Leslie Voltaire. Leslie Voltaire recommended that there should be a change in ministers, the cabinet of the Prime Minister. Now, the Prime Minister, Garry Conille, refused to change the ministers. He refused to have a cabinet reshuffle. He is the Prime Minister. He should be in charge of the cabinet. But the president, that is the current president of the PTC, Haiti, was recommending that there should be a change in the cabinets. Now, that difference in how to run government is what has led to this decision by the PTC to remove Garry Conille. The people who were supposed to be changed from the cabinet are very, very critical, including the Interior Cabinet Secretary. The Interior Cabinet Secretary is very, very much involved with what is going on in the country currently. He is the one also who is very much involved with what the MSS does and what the Haitian National Police does. Therefore, there shouldn't be a lot of changes in such very, very critical dockets in the country because someone has just stepped into power as the president in a rotational basis. Now, Garry Conille did not want a cabinet reshuffle. That is one of the reasons as to why the Presidential Transitional Council under Leslie Voltaire has decided to fire Garry Conille. Well, Garry Conille did not only get into disagreements with the new president of the PTC, he was also at odds with the previous president of the PTC. And this happened when Garry Conille decided to go to the UN General Assembly without giving a notice to the president of the PTC. He went to the UNGA with full diplomatic security given to him by the United States when he got into the United States. And that did not augur well with Edgar Leblanc, who was the president of the PTC. Well, Edgar Leblanc also went to the UNGA after Prime Minister Garry Conille went to the UNGA. And Edgar Leblanc, you can remember, he was the one who gave the speech about Haiti at the UNGA summit. But something happened in between before he gave that speech and before he was allowed into the country as a president. He was previously denied the full status, the full security details of a sitting head of state because that was already given to Prime Minister Garry Conille, but he was later accorded these privileges. In another session, there was another member of the Presidential Transitional Council who was not allowed to go into a high-level meeting where Prime Minister Garry Conille attended. It is also important to note that there was a scandal just last month over Presidential Transitional Council, and I did a video about this. There were members of the Presidential Transitional Council who asked for a bribe, a total of $750,000 for someone to get a job. Now, that happened when Edgar Leblanc was the head of the Presidential Transitional Council. Now, the current president of the PTC, Leslie Voltaire, asked the Prime Minister to fire the 3 members of the Presidential Transitional Council who were implicated in these corruption charges. Now, in his defense, the Prime Minister Garry Conille said that he cannot get into matters that the judiciary should handle, that the judiciary should take over and investigate and make a ruling whether these people are fit to be in office or not. So these are the reasons as to why Leslie Voltaire and his team decided to sign a decree to remove Garry Conille from office. The PTC has recommended that Alix Didier replace Prime Minister Garry Conille. Now, that decree was signed by the members of the Presidential Transitional Council, but one member did not agree to it, and that is the former president of the Presidential Transitional Council, Edgar Leblanc, who has said that he will not sign the decree to remove Prime Minister Garry Conille. Now, these power struggles in Haiti are not new. They have been seen before. These are the reasons, as I said earlier, why Haiti is in this place, because of the political disagreements that keep on flaring up. Haiti is in a crisis right now, but the political stakeholders don't seem to put that into perspective. They are still power hungry. the Presidential Transitional Council wants to affect what is happening in the Prime Minister's docket, which is not supposed to happen, because the Prime Minister should be the head of government. The Prime Minister should know who he should work with as the member of cabinet and who he should fire. He should not get that advice from anyone else as the Prime Minister. The Presidential Transitional Council is supposed to work as advisory, is supposed to work as a unifying factor for the entire nation. If there is any discord in the Prime Minister's docket, if there's any discord in the cabinet, that is when the Presidential Transitional Council will come in to solve those disputes. But as it seems right now, there are disputes in the Presidential Transitional Council, and that is affecting the work of the government in that country. Now, this is a very critical matter, because world leaders had accustomed themselves to work with Garry Conille as the Prime Minister. We saw even Garry Conille in Kenya having bilateral talks with President Ruto. There was something that was being prepared by these two leaders. They had some kind of an agreement, they had some kind of talks, and they were heading somewhere. Now, all this takes us back to having a new Prime Minister who has to reintroduce themselves, who has now to go over what the Prime Minister Garry Conille was doing, and it is an entire process. Some people are saying that the Presidential Transitional Council, the PTC, does not have the mandate to fire a Prime Minister. And that is true. The President cannot fire a Prime Minister. Only the Parliament can fire a Prime Minister. But as we know the situation in Haiti right now, there is no government. There are no elected leaders. There is no one who has a mandate to elect a Prime Minister, because elections were held a long time ago, and everyone who was elected has surpassed their mandate, therefore they are not in office. This political crisis is why the gangs are taking advantage of the situation in Haiti, because there are no elected leaders. There is literally no legitimate government in Haiti. These are appointed people by CARICOM community, and they are misbehaving as we speak right now. They are not in agreement. One is firing the other, and the other is saying that this is not fair. And these are the factions. This is how the factions now come in and feed on the gang mentality that this government is not working. We need a renaissance. Now, the MSS has to work with a government in place. The MSS has to work with an administration. Without a working administration, the MSS cannot work. Without an administration that has the support from the locals, the MSS cannot adjudicate its responsibilities in Haiti. As you know, President Ruto had to wait for a new government so that he could send his first batch of 382 police officers in Haiti. Literally, he had to wait until June 25th so that he could send his first police officers to Haiti, because there was a new government, there was a new prime minister. These disagreements, the firing, the power vacuum, and everything that is happening, the political instability in Haiti, is making the work of the MSS twice as hard as it should be. Because right now they have to battle the gangs, and right now also the government seems not to be working. There are a lot of disagreements, and this is even breaking the chain of command. People don't know who they should answer to. They don't know what will happen next. These uncertainties are the ones that are making the Haitian National Police to lose morale. They are feeding on the gangs. Now the gangs have something to say to the locals that, see, your government is failing, that your government is not even taking care of you. They're only taking care of themselves. They want to have more power. They want to have more privilege, and they're not concerned about you. So you should support us to take over power. Without an administration, the MSS really cannot work in Haiti. And that is the sad reality of what is happening right now. If these leaders cannot come into an agreement, if these leaders cannot work together, then there will not be any Calvary for Haiti. And that will be a very sad situation for the millions of people in Haiti who are expecting the government of the day to do something about the gangs that are terrorizing the people of Haiti. In a sad reality, as I finish, this year, from January up to October, around 4,900 people have lost their lives in Haiti. 4,900 is much, much more than what can be compared by the whole of last year. These are lives of people. These are families. These are someone's mother, someone's father, someone's children who have lost their lives senselessly because of things that can be prevented. Without an active government, nothing can be done for Haiti. And it is important that these leaders should come together to, first of all, sort the immediate or the emergent things in their country before they think about themselves. And that will help to forge Haiti's path forward towards a country that is united and a country that can win over the gangs that are terrorizing the citizens in Port-au-Prince and the larger Haiti. So that is the update as per now. The Presidential Transitional Council has decided to sign a decree to remove Prime Minister Garry Conille from office because of the reasons that I have just given. And it seems, as many political analysts will say, it seems this is a political coup that has just happened. And this is furthering the crisis that is happening in Haiti that will lead to more people suffering under the gangs because of lack of unity in the top leadership.